My journey, I had a fair bit of childhood trauma, and like once I hit 12, which was in 2002, I picked up like ice, which is pretty young to be picking it up, and like I was using that every day before school, and like I didn't realise that it was just like a way of avoiding all those feelings that had come up because of the trauma. Like I wasn't able to sit with myself, and so like I just looked for any means I could to change the way I felt. And then like it went on, and like from ice I moved on to heroin and started using like intravenously, and like it was the same reason I was using the whole time. It was like the trauma from when I was a kid. So like the trauma became my identity, and so like I kept experiencing more and more traumas, like more and more intensely, because that's who I thought I was. And so like that became another form of addiction, really, I guess. And then when I tried to stop using, because like I didn't have the drugs to numb all those feelings, all these feelings started coming back up, and that was what led me back like to relapse every single time. And like I tried many times to stop. I've done rehab 17 times. I tried countless times on my own. I have no idea how many times, and I was never able to do it because as soon as I'd stop taking the drug, the feelings would just be overwhelming, and then I'd end up going to use just to deal with them again. Last year in December, I was in a rehab and one of my friends was there, and what happened was like we sort of convinced each other like, you know, let's leave, let's go score, and all that sort of stuff. And so we ended up leaving together in the morning at like 7 a.m. so no one could stop us. And like I ended up living with him for a few weeks. Like we were using drugs together, and then we had a fight. I left his house and then ended up going back to rehab a few months later, and I hadn't spoken to him since. And I went into the psychiatrist's office, and she's like, I've got some bad news, like you know, he's overdosed and passed away. And so for the next day I was just in this like panic state, because it re-triggered all my old traumas because I've lost a lot of people to addiction. And so like I was ready to leave like rehab again because everything was being triggered like once again. And you know, the smallest situation can trigger those things. This was just one that related specifically to what had happened to me. And so what happened was I was sitting outside like having a cigarette, just in like a state of panic. I was like trying to make myself vomit because I like my head told me that if I could vomit, I'd vomit up this panic, just like all insane sort of things. And then I saw Leslie, and like she came out and sat with me, and I'd heard about this technique before, but I'd never thought like to use it in a situation like this. And within 10 minutes I was like calm and sort of in acceptance. I couldn't even like I said to her, I don't even think it was that bad before, but it was. Like my head made out it was be all and end all, like I had to go use again. But 10 minutes later I was just sort of like back in my body. I was back in like the present moment, and yeah, got a lot of relief from that moment. Doing the work with Leslie, it gave me like the 28 days to be able to, like the means to be able to stay in the rehab, to give me the 28 days to clear my mind, to find out like what sort of traumas I actually had. And then once I left rehab, I was able to go see Keith and actually work on each individual trauma. And as I worked on each individual trauma, they got less and less. And like, as they got less and less, like they eventually collapsed completely. And like I didn't know what I was going to be dealing with, but I knew there was something I had to be dealing with. And if I hadn't have gone and dealt with these traumas, like, you know, they would have been triggered, and I either would have like clenched my fists and dealt with them for a time, but it would have led me back to using eventually. Like it always is what leads me back to using. Like once I'd resolved the traumas, there was still like cravings and stuff. Cravings were able to be triggered even though my trauma wasn't. They were a lot easier to deal with when I didn't have the trauma, because there wasn't that intense need for it, but there was still a need. And so what me and Keith did after we'd resolved all my traumas is work on all the triggers for using. And like I had a lot of obsession about using like early days, like when I first got clean and stuff. And like I found like what I did with Keith, like it dissolved those triggers from my past as well. So like I'm able to hear people talk about drugs now and whatnot and not be triggered at all. It doesn't concern me, and that would have been so foreign for me in the past. It was like one word, one mention of like my drug of choice and off my head goes for the next week. But that doesn't happen anymore. Like I stopped having dreams about using, I stopped talking about using, I stopped talking about like my past, like all that sort of stuff. It really has nothing to do with who I am today anymore. My recovery has become, like life has become my recovery. You know, I see a lot of people go into the rooms and that becomes their life, like into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. But the process I did with Leslie and Keith has become, or gave me the means to be able to make everything in life my recovery. And so now I'm able to help people with seeing things from that perspective, like seeing everything as an opportunity to grow. Before all of this, like my parents had given up on me, like completely. They didn't really want anything to do with me. Well, they did, but not if I was gonna continue to use drugs. And so what's happened with my parents now, like I'm able to look at them not through like I'm your drug addict son and just completely, that's all it is, like you're my mum who looks after me and I'm just a hopeless drug addict. I don't look at things like that anymore. I can look at my mum in the eyes and just be there in that moment with her, and like she appreciates that more than anything. I think that like I'd tried everything myself and I realised it wasn't going to work. And like I've lost a lot of people to this addiction. Like I've had girlfriends overdose, friends overdose, like right in front of me. And I sort of hit this point where I realised that all that's going to happen if I go out and use again is I'm going to die. And when I was in rehab, like my counsellor said to me, he goes, if you go out and use again, best case scenario, you end up back in rehab. And I said, no, that feels like the worst case scenario. Like I think I'd rather die than keep doing this. Like, it was torturous. It was the most miserable existence. Like it was horrible. And like that forced me into a place of like just surrender where I just let go. I was willing to listen to other people. But I see people get clean all the time that don't go through all that sort of stuff. And so it doesn't have to get that bad. And like at the start, like I sort of wished that I didn't let it get that bad, but now it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't affect me now. So I don't really like giving advice because I think everyone's where they need to be. But just, I guess, give yourself a chance and like listen to other people.